In 1983, Don Van Vliet would retire from the music career as Captain Beefheart. He would quietly move to the beautiful coast of Humboldt County in Northern California. Right now, I stand on the coast of Trinidad, California, which Don Van Vliet would fall in love with in 1971. So please follow along as I explore Don Van Vliet's more quiet but lucrative art career. And don't worry, I won't be doing that goofy accent through this whole video. It's actually kind of tough for me to do. So I accidentally stumbled across something that I read about a long time ago, and I just didn't know where it was. But I stumbled across it. Right here it says Buried at Sea, and it says Trinidad Civic Club. Well, if you come over here, you have under the 1941 right here, you have Don Van Vliet. He passed away in 2010. Right underneath him is his wife, Jan Van Vliet. Now, she doesn't have a number, of course, because she has not passed away yet, but she will be memorialized right underneath Don Van Vliet when she does. So kind of interesting and sweet, don't you think? Now, I don't know what constitutes as buried at sea, but I do know that Don Van Vliet was cremated, so I don't know if they put his ashes in the ocean, or I don't know how legal that is. I don't know. I'm not even going to go there. I don't know the full history on this, but it's kind of interesting that I stumbled across this. So if you're ever on the beautiful coast of Trinidad, California, you'll look for this right here, Memorial Lighthouse, Trinidad Civic Club, 1949. You would look for that, and then you would go down these stairs, these steps right down over here, and that's where you would find that memorial. It's over here on Edward Street in Trinidad, California. Yeah, so I just stumbled on this, and it says, "In loving memory to those who perished at sea, they shall live forever in our hearts." I'm pretty sure Don Van Vliet did not perish at sea, but I think it's really touching that they at least allowed his name down there, because he loved this area. It was sometime in 1971 when Captain Beefhart and his magic band would rent a compound/horse ranch somewhere outside of Trinidad, California. And this is where the whole band would live communally. And this is where they would also practice and rehearse material for their 6th studio album, The Spotlight Kid. Now, because there's no public address online, some of this is going to be whereabouts. And there's no telling where the band rented this horse ranch. But, you know, from my understanding, it was a very secluded horse ranch. So we can get the idea of the whereabouts. This would be Don Van Vliet's first time seeing the beautiful coast of Humboldt County. And he fell in love with it instantly. Now, of course, at the time, he was living in the Mojave Desert, which is a completely different landscape. The next place we're going to go look at is the first and only Captain Beefhart and his magic band's performance.
And I do mean their only performance in Humboldt County.
And we're going to go look at that right now. Let's go. Right behind me here is Humboldt Brews. Right now I'm in Arcata, California. Back in 1980, this used to be called the Red Pepper, a restaurant of some sort. It was a venue for live music. And this is where Captain Beefhart and his magic band would play on January 22nd, 1981. And that would be in between two of his albums, Dock at the Radar Station, which came out in 1980, and Ice Cream for Crow, his last album that he would come out with in 1982. This would be their one and only show in Humboldt County. Oops, it turns out on the same tour they did play at Cal Poly Humboldt. At the time it was called Humboldt State University. Now it was in 1982, shortly after that show, that they would come out with Ice Cream for Crow. Now this was the album that was critically acclaimed, but it was not very commercially successful, and this was one of the reasons why Captain Beefheart would end up hanging his hat up and just becoming Don Van Vliet full-time. He actually made a video for Ice Cream for Crow and tried to get it onto MTV, but MTV refused to play the videos. At this point, due to his health problems and just the music industry just eating up Captain Beefheart, this is around the time that he would just retire from the music industry. And he was also talking to some big art mucky mucks, big art collectors that noticed a lot of the album covers that he was coming out with, and on those album covers was his personal art. And it was widely known that Don Van Vliet was a pretty good abstract artist. Now, it was art collector Michael Wernin that actually talked Don Van Vliet into considering a full-time career as a painter. He really enjoyed his stuff. He really enjoyed his album covers. It was 1985 when Don Van Vliet would have one of his first real representational art shows in New York. And surprisingly, it actually did really well. Don Van Vliet would find that the art world was much more lucrative than his music career. And this was also a big reason that Don Van Vliet decided to become a full-time artist. Shortly after making this decision to become a full-time artist, Don and Jan Van Vliet would move out into the very secluded coast of Humboldt County, just outside of Trinidad. We're gonna go there next. Let's go.
Mother got the level, but the dope down, blah, blah, blah. But all the butter and chip up in the oh, no, I don't like the food. Shut little bitch, and go to your room. Like folk kind of body, I do. Mother was a brother, then the mother was the mouse. Hey, be out, baby, out of food. You gonna let baby cry like you do?
Right now I'm in the very backwoods of Trinidad, California, and I'm standing on what is known as Stagecoach Road. Well, ladies and gentlemen, since I have taken a little bit more of a deeper dive, I have found out that Don Van Vliet did not live off of Stagecoach Road. He actually lived off of Scenic Drive, which is right behind me. And it is, after finding out a few things, I found out that right behind me is possibly the house that Don Van Vliet and Jan lived for the years that he lived up here. So now we're not 100% sure, but we do know by this photo right here, which I hope to match up, that is supposedly his backyard. Everything else I say in the video while I'm on Stagecoach Road is correct. It's just the one thing that I got incorrect, and I found out as I was editing. He actually lives right down Scenic Drive in Trinidad, California. So right now we're at Baker Beach, and this is about the only spot a mile down the road from where Captain Beefhart lives that you can actually kind of see the rock formation of his backyard. Unfortunately, it's a treacherous trail to go down, so I probably won't make it all the way down. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is about as far as I'm going to go because I have my little one here, my dog. But anyway, if you look over here, you'll see these rock formations right here. And it's said that Captain Beefheart lived right on the coast. His house was, you could see the ocean from his house, from his home. And you could see these rock formations in the photo. So I'm not going to get an exact lineup or anything like that, but you know, it would take a lot because I would have to be up on top of the hill and go through private property to actually do that. But this is as close as we're going to get. I'm not sure if this island was in the photo or not. I don't have the photo on me, and unfortunately, internet sucks out here. But you can see from a higher view how this is definitely his backyard. Now we all know that the music industry wasn't so kind to Captain Beefheart and his magic band, but that wasn't the only reason why he retired from music. Also, he was diagnosed with MS, multiple sclerosis. That was a big part of this as well. And another part of this was his love for art. Don Van Vliet's first love, even as a kid, was painting and sculpting. Art. He loved art. In fact, he was known as a young child as a prodigy. I think some of that may have been embellished by the fact that he said he would be locked in his room and they would feed him under his door and he never went to school. That's all obviously very embellished, but he did have some talent as a kid. Now, Don Van Vliet was very, very secretive about where he was moving to. He's many times joked about how it's too hot in the Mojave Desert and he was going to move to Arizona because it was hotter. Obviously a joke, a very Captain Beefheart joke. Now there's multiple accounts online that talk about being Don Van Vliet's neighbor. There's a whole Reddit section that people will leave their stories, their moments where they would run into Don Van Vliet or Jane Van Vliet. On December 2010, local journalist Bob Duran wrote a tribute piece after Don Van Vliet passed away, recalling the time he was a chef at the airport restaurant called the Silver Lining. Right behind me here is California Redwood Coast Airport in McKinleyville, California. He wrote that the ex-drummer for the Magic Band and Zappa's Mothers of Invention, Art Tripp, would oftentimes eat at the Silver Lining, stating that Art Tripp liked his cooking. Art Tripp was also the person that would take and pick up Don Van Vliet during the times Van Vliet needed to go to the airport to get to his art openings and return from his art openings. He would oftentimes go to art openings as far as the UK and obviously New York, San Francisco, all the many far off locations. This is where Don Van Vliet would go and come back from those shows, right at this airport. Now, Bob Doran recalled one night when Don Van Vliet and Art Tripp would show up to the restaurant near closing.
This would be sometime in the mid to late 80s.
It would just be Don Van Vliet, Art Tripp, and Bob Doran. They actually had a pretty good conversation. Bob Doran recalls Don Van Vliet pulling out a cigar. Because there was no smoking in the restaurant, Bob felt like, well, I probably should tell him no, but then kind of caught himself and thought, who am I to tell Don Van Vliet not to smoke a cigar? Don Van Vliet would end up handing Bob and Art a cigar, and they sat around the table and had a good conversation, apparently. Bob remembers that Don Van Vliet was not very excited about the music that was on the radio, which was pop music. I think it was Prince at the time. And requested to turn that off and put on some jazz. And that sounds like Don Van Vliet, doesn't it? I do want to say that the Silver Lining restaurant closed around 2020, and it used to be upstairs here. Now it's just corporate office. Right now we're in Arcata, California, and right behind me here is Mad River Hospital. Now, it was multiple times that people have claimed to see Jane Van Vliet pushing around Don in a wheelchair, oftentimes here, because this is where he would go for his checkups because of his MS. The older he got, the more difficult it was for him to get around. Now, Don Van Vliet passed away on December 17th, 2010. He was 69 years old, and he passed away at the same very hospital that he would come for his checkups, at the Mad River Community Hospital. This person's recording me. Rest in peace, Don Van Vliet, aka Captain Beefheart. Ladies and gentlemen, if you like this video, consider watching this video right over here. And if you don't want to watch that video right there, check out this video right here, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.